You're drowning in work. Your car broke down. You haven't slept properly in weeks. Someone close to you, someone who genuinely cares, asks if you need help, and without thinking, you smile and say, "No, I'm fine. I've got it." But you don't have it, and they can see that. And now there's this weird tension in the air, because they know you're struggling, and you know they know. But you'd rather collapse under the weight of it all than let someone carry even a small piece of it with you. If that sounds familiar, this video is about you. Because psychologists have discovered that people who never ask for help aren't just independent. They're often living with a very specific psychological pattern that formed long before they even realized it. And understanding why you do this might be the most important thing you learn about yourself this year. Let's start with what most people get wrong. When someone refuses help over and over again, we tend to think they're just proud, stubborn, maybe a little controlling. But here's what research in attachment psychology has revealed. For many people, refusing help isn't about pride at all. It's about safety. Let me explain. There are generally a few different psychological profiles that show up when we talk about people who can't ask for help, and chances are, you'll recognize yourself in at least one of them. Group 1 are the people who learned early on that asking for help came with a cost. Maybe their caregivers were inconsistent, sometimes available, sometimes emotionally absent, or maybe help always came with guilt, shame, or strings attached. So their brain made a quiet decision. It's safer to need no one than to need someone who might not show up. Psychologists call this an avoidant attachment style. And it's one of the most common patterns in adults who struggle to ask for help. They're not being difficult. They're protecting themselves from a pain they've already experienced. Group 2 are the ones who were forced to grow up too fast. These are the people who took care of younger siblings while their parents were overwhelmed. The ones who became the emotional support system for a depressed or struggling parent. Psychologists have a term for this, parentification. It's when a child is put in the role of the adult, and it teaches them a very dangerous lesson, that their job is to give, not to receive, that their worth is tied to how much they can handle alone. And decades later, even when they're burnt out and barely functioning, the idea of asking for help feels wrong, like a betrayal of who they're supposed to be. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Group 3 doesn't fit neatly into either category. These are people who don't have a traumatic backstory. They weren't neglected. They weren't but somewhere along the way, they internalized a belief that needing help makes them a burden. Maybe they watched a parent struggle and swore they'd never ask anyone for anything. Maybe they grew up in a culture or family system where self-reliance was the highest virtue. Or maybe they just noticed, over time, that the people who seemed the most respected were the ones who never seemed to need anyone, so they became that person. The reliable one, the one who has it together, the one who never asks. And on the surface, it looks like strength. But underneath, it's exhausting. Now here's the part most people don't understand. When you refuse help, especially when you desperately need it, not just making a social choice, you're activating a very specific part of your nervous system. Neuroscientists who study stress and attachment have found that for people with this pattern, receiving help can actually feel more threatening than struggling alone. And that's because your nervous system has been trained to associate vulnerability with danger. Think about it. If you grew up in an environment where showing weakness led to disappointment, rejection, or emotional neglect, your brain learned to equate needing someone with getting hurt. So now, even when someone offers help with no strings attached, your body responds as if you're in danger. Your heart rate might spike. You feel a wave of discomfort. You want to shut it down? Change the subject. Insist you're fine. That's a nervous system response. It's your brain trying to protect you from a pain it remembers, even if that pain isn't happening anymore. And this is where things get complicated. Because the very thing that might actually help you, connection, support, shared burden, feels like the last thing you want. But here's what researchers in trauma and attachment therapy want you to know. Hyperindependence is not a personality trait. It's a survival mechanism. And it worked. It got you through situations where you couldn't rely on anyone. It helped you survive emotional neglect, inconsistency, or chaos. It made you resilient in a world that didn't feel safe. But survival mechanisms have a shelf life. And the thing that protected you as a child might be the very thing that's isolating you now. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this for a second. When was the last time you let someone take care of you? Not in a performative way, not where you said, okay, fine, and then micromanaged the whole thing. But really, let someone step in. Let them cook you a meal while you rested. Let them listen, without you switching the conversation back to them. Let them see you struggling without apologizing for it. If you can't remember, or if the thought of that makes your chest tighten, that's the pattern. And here's the deeper truth beneath it all. You're not afraid of asking for help. You're afraid of what it means because in your mind, asking for help means admitting you're not enough. It means giving someone the power to let you down. It means losing control. And after a lifetime of holding everything together on your own, the idea of loosening that grippy van a little feels terrifying. But psychologists who specialize in attachment repair have found something really beautiful. They've discovered that learning to receive help is one of the most profound forms of healing because it teaches your nervous system something it may have never fully learned, that you can be vulnerable and still be safe, that needing someone doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, that interdependence isn't the opposite of strength, it's the foundation of it. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but I have asked for help before and it didn't go well, and I believe you. Maybe the person dismissed you. Maybe they made it about them. Maybe they helped, but held it over your head later, and that's the tricky part. Because when you've been conditioned to expect disappointment, you may unconsciously choose people who confirm that belief. Or you ask in a way that's so small, so apologetic, that it's easy for others to miss how much you're actually struggling. But that doesn't mean the problem is you. It means your system is still learning what safe help looks like. And safe help doesn't come with shame. It doesn't require you to perform gratitude or shrink yourself in return. It doesn't make you feel like you owe someone a piece of your soul. Safe help is quiet. It's consistent. It's offered without expectation. And it doesn't disappear the moment you actually accept it. So if you're someone who never asks for help, here's what I want you to consider. What if refusing help isn't protecting you anymore? What if it's just keeping you lonely? What if the people who offer to support you aren't trying to take your power, they're trying to share the load because they actually care? And what if learning to say, yes, I need help, is the bravest thing you could do? Not because it's easy, but because it requires you to challenge a belief system that's been running your life for years. You don't have to do this alone. And the fact that you can doesn't mean you should. Because here's the thing about being human. We're not built for total independence. We're built for connection, for reciprocity, for the kind of relationships where sometimes you hold someone up and sometimes they hold you. And if you've spent your whole life being the strong one, the capable one, the one who never needs anything, maybe it's time to let someone else be strong for you. Not because you're broken, but because you deserve to be cared for. So here's my question for you, and I'd love to hear your answer in the comments. What's the hardest part about asking for help? Is it the fear of being a burden, the fear of disappointment, or something else entirely? Let's talk about it. Because I think a lot of us are carrying this pattern, and maybe it's time we stop carrying it alone. But psychologists who specialize in attachment repair have found something really beautiful. They've discovered that learning to receive help is not just a behavioral shift, it is one of the most profound forms of neurological healing. Because it teaches your nervous system something it may have never fully learned in childhood, that you can be completely vulnerable and still be completely safe. That needing someone doesn't make you weak, it makes you human for decades. We've glorified the image of the lone wolf, the self-made survivor, but neurobiology tells a completely different story. Humans are not designed for total emotional independence. We are biologically wired for something called when a baby is distressed, it cannot calm its own nervous system. It requires the physical and emotional presence of a regulated adult to bring its heart rate down. As we grow, we learn to self-regulate, but the biological need for co-regulation never actually disappears. When you are drowning in stress, your brain is scanning the environment for a safe person to anchor to. But if your trauma has taught you that people are the source of danger rather than the solution to it, you deny yourself the very biological mechanism designed to save you. You force your nervous system to fight a two-front war, battling the stress of your life, while simultaneously battling your own biological need for comfort. Now, if you are listening to this, I know exactly what your defense mechanism is screaming right now. You are thinking that you have asked for help before, and it was a disaster. And I believe you. Maybe the person dismissed you. Maybe they made it all about them. Maybe they helped you, but they held it over your head for years, weaponizing their support the next time you had an argument. When you have a history of being let down, asking for help isn't just hard, it feels like touching a hot stove. But clinical psychology offers a fascinating explanation for why your past attempts at asking for help may have failed. It involves two very specific psychological traps. The first trap is what psychoanalysts call repetition compulsion. When we have unresolved trauma, our subconscious mind will actually seek out people who mirror our early childhood dynamics, hoping to finally fix the If you grew up with a parent who was emotionally unavailable, you will subconsciously be drawn to friends or partners who are also emotionally unavailable. So, when you finally break down and ask them for help, they let you down. Not because asking for help is inherently dangerous, but because your trauma selected the exact wrong person to ask. You asked someone who was fundamentally incapable of giving, and your brain used their failure as proof that you should just do everything yourself. The second trap is the covert ask. Because hyper-dependent people are terrified of rejection, they rarely ask for help directly. Instead, they drop subtle hints. They sigh loudly. They mention how overwhelmed they are, hoping the other person will proactively step in and save them. They ask in a way that is so small, so heavily guarded, that it is incredibly easy for normal people to miss how much they are actually struggling. And when the other person inevitably misses the hint, the hyper-independent person feels a dark sense of validation. They tell themselves that nobody cares, and they have to do it all themselves. But that doesn't mean the problem is you. It means your nervous system is still learning what safe help actually looks like. Safe help does not come with a ledger of debt. It is not transactional. It doesn't require you to perform extreme gratitude, or shrink yourself, or feel like you owe someone a piece of your soul in return. Safe help is quiet. It is consistent. It is offered without expectation. And most importantly, it does not disappear the moment you finally find the courage to accept it. But allowing safe help into your life requires you to grieve something very specific. You have to let go of your identity as the strong one. For your entire life, your value in your relationships has likely been tied to your utility. You are the fixer, the rock, the one who has it all together. If you stop being the one who carries everyone else's burdens and you actually ask someone to carry yours, who are you? Will they still love you if you aren't useful? That is the terrifying identity crisis of the hyper-independent person. The fear that beneath your extreme competence, there is nothing left to love. So, if you are someone who never asks for help, here is the paradigm shift I want you to consider today. What if refusing help isn't protecting you anymore? What if it is just keeping you profoundly lonely? When you refuse to let people help you, you think you are saving them from a burden. But psychological studies on altruism show something called the helper's high. Helping someone you care about triggers a massive release of oxytocin and dopamine in the brain. It builds intimacy. It builds trust. When you constantly say that you are fine and you have got it, you are not just isolating yourself. You are actively denying the people who love you the joy and connection of being there for you. You are building a glass wall between you and the rest of the world. You can see them, and they can see you. But no one can actually touch. What if the people who offer to support you aren't trying to take your power? What if they are trying to share the load simply because you matter to them? And what if learning to look someone in the eye and say that you are drowning right now and you need them is the absolute bravest thing you could ever do? Not because it is easy, but because it requires you to actively rebel against a trauma response that has been running your life in the background for decades. You do not have to do this alone. And the fact that you can survive alone does not mean you should. Because here is the deepest truth about being human. Interdependence is not the opposite of strength. It is the foundation of it. We are built for reciprocity. We are built for the kind of relationships where sometimes you are the pillar holding the roof up, and sometimes you are the one leaning against it because your legs have finally given out. If you have spent your entire life being the capable one, the reliable one, the one who swallows their panic and handles the crisis, maybe it is time to let someone else be strong for you. Not because you are broken, but because you are human and you deserve to be cared for. 2. So here's my question for you, and I would genuinely love to read your answers in the comments below. When you think about asking someone for help today, what is the hardest part? Is it the fear of being a burden? The fear of giving up control? Or the quiet terror that, if you ask, they might say no? Let's talk about it. Because I know a lot of us are carrying this exact pattern. And maybe, starting today, it is time we stop carrying it alone.